And now, live from England, bringing you news and analysis that you won't find on the corporate and government mainstream media. It's the WideShut Webcast.
Good evening, everybody. You are tuned in to another episode of the WideShut Webcast on resistradio.com. As always, I am your host, Keelan Balderson, and I thank you for joining me as we cut through this week's mainstream propaganda and spin. Breaking news today, Iran has docked 2 warships in Syria. They signed the deal last year where Iran would help train some of the Syrian Navy, and it couldn't have gone ahead at a worse time, really, as the West is ramping up the war drums against Syria. Israel also obviously beating the war drum. They're saying they'll keep a close eye on these ships in case they head for Israel, which is ridiculous, as if 2 ships are going to go confront Israel. That'd be suicide. But they have to keep the narrative going. They have to keep badgering on that Iran are the bad guys and they may attack them because Iran are the bad guys. So that's the way it's been spun. Also today, the IAEA are back in Iran discussing their supposed nuclear, their nuclear power, which the West claims is a nuclear weapons program. And really they're only there because 2 nuclear states who already have weapons, Israel and the US, keep bringing up this phony intelligence that was on a laptop given to the CIA by an Iranian terror group, the MEK, who have ties to America and Israel. And these supposed documents that show Iran had intent to pursue nuclear weapons just happen to be written in English. So if they're original documents given to them, why on earth are they written in English? But they don't like to go into those details. It's obviously just a propaganda piece, because all the way up until that point, every year the IAEA was saying, look, Iran, they're not diverting uranium into nuclear weapons. It's only, it started off at like 4% or something. Now it's at 20% for nuclear power. Each year, all the reports said Iran was fine, and now they have to come out with this rubbish. This propaganda from a laptop that mysteriously landed in the CIA headquarters, written in English. It's just ridiculous. But what we're going to get to tonight, we're not going to go into that. We've got a few other stories that I want to get to. A story we've been talking about on this show for many months is the government loophole that is allowing top retail chains, supermarkets and clothes stores and things like that, to effectively use slave labour. I gave the example a while back of my stepbrother who was forced into one of these programs where you have to work for the job seeker's allowance. He had to do it in a supermarket. I remember job seeker's allowance is something like £64 a week. And they're forcing people into these non-jobs for up to 6 months without the prospect of actually getting a full-time job. And this is supposed to be a program about getting people back into work. We also touched on it briefly with author Chris Morris. You can check that interview out in the archives at wideshut.co.uk. But this story's finally hit the mainstream as the unions have begun to take notice. I'm not really sure why anyone gives the unions any credibility anymore, considering they were riding on the coattails of Labour for long enough, as if Labour is really for the people's labour. Yeah, they've pledged your labour to the bankers, folks. But noise is finally being made about this loophole. People are on the streets actually closing down supermarkets, closing down Tesco's, who are signed up to this program, and hopefully the people can reverse this. So we'll be getting into that today. Also news that Jobcentre Plus has been fudging their statistics on how many jobs are actually available. Surprise, surprise. You know, those damn work shy, unwilling to work jobs that don't exist. You know, in my day, Sonny, we used to work lots of jobs that didn't exist. You're just lazy. Ridiculous. Also, Clinton attends unofficial G20 meeting to discuss global governance. Mexico hosts pre-G20 meeting where foreign ministers will discuss the increased need for effective global governance. But the New World Order is just a conspiracy theory, isn't it, folks? Nobody wants to take the power away from the people. Nobody wants to centralize power across the world. If you believe that, you're mentally ill. David Aranovich told me so. Chatham House and web of world government think tanks conducting studies in order to analyse and then change public opinion on climate change. See, they have to engineer a consensus because people aren't falling for their propaganda. How many more climate gates do we need? How many more predictions do they need to get wrong before they stop pushing their collectivist solutions, their world taxes, their deindustrialization? Also, if we've got time, we'll be getting into the latest on the shooting of Mark Duggan, which was really the root cause of last summer's riots in London and in lots of other cities as well. And the inquest for that is coming up. I can't quite remember the date, but it's ridiculously in the future, like maybe even next year. But if the shooting turns out to be a fraud of this Mark Duggan guy, which is pretty much a given anyway, if you go by the evidence currently out there in the public domain, the guy didn't fire at the police. So if it all comes out, then we know who to blame for the riots, don't we? Not the impoverished teenagers who were sold a lie that we live in a prosperous society only to have the credit card of the government bounce and the rug pulled from beneath them. It's not their fault. Now obviously I don't support violence, but when you have a Ponzi scheme where the wealth literally goes from the bottom to the top, and those at the bottom are squeezed so much by that system that they then have to rely on public services and welfare, and then you squeeze them a little bit more and take that welfare and those services away, and then you unnecessarily shoot somebody after years of police treating people like crap in that area. All I'm saying is you've created a powder keg. It's gonna go pop. It's not about whether it's right or wrong, or whether they're scum or they're not. It doesn't even matter. The government made their bed, and instead of lying in it, they're trying to take everybody's rights away. Trying to shut down social media, all this rubbish. And that we'll also get into this other thing that came out the other day. We're going back into 1984, folks, because phone and email records are to be stored in a new spy plan. Everything, every communication everybody makes is to be stored in a database. But if you got nothing to hide, what you got to worry about? I don't know, authoritarianism? Tyranny? That's what I'm worried about. So, we've got all that and more to get into today. But before we start, I just want to give a shout out to the UK Freedom Movement page on Facebook. And a gentleman by the name of Craig Evans, who basically lets me spam this page every day with my links. So I thank you for that. Some good stuff on there, so be sure to check them out at that link I've just pasted in. A good place to share info with people that actually care about what's going on. You know, you're not annoying people on your normal wall. You can share information with people that do want to actually look into what's going on in the world. And also hello to any potential new listeners out there. The show is gradually growing. We've now been approved for iTunes, so if you're, one of those iTunes users that have one of those evil eye thingies from the serpent's apple, you can go to wideshut.co.uk and click the iTunes link below the show player on there. Put up a new snazzy show player on the main page, and you'll see an iTunes link. Click that and it should pop up and do whatever it does. Also, I've noticed that the show's been popping up on a few BitTorrent trackers, which is sort of a file sharing system that people use. So hello to anyone that found us through BitTorrent. If you're wondering who I am, or what Resistance Radio is, or what the WideShut webcast is all about, I think Mr. Brit sums it up quite nicely on the official website for the network, resistradio.com. He calls it a credible middle ground between mainstream corpaganda and internet conspiranoia. And I'd agree with that. I'd argue that there's as many con men and liars and deceivers in the alternative media as there is in the mainstream media. There's as much garbage in the alternative media as there is in the mainstream media. And a lot of people tend to jump from being blind sheep of the mainstream media to being blind sheep of whatever video on YouTube, anyone puts up. So I would agree with that definition of what we are, what our goals are. We're trying to be a middle ground between mainstream corpaganda and internet conspiranoia. Now, if you are new, I don't think you'd be here if you didn't realise that there's something wrong with the world, the way the world's currently working or not working, as the case may be. We're in a deep economic recession. There are endless wars, political parties that refuse to tackle any of the problems. There's no difference between any of the parties. Most people should see that now, with this coalition government. They're identical to each other. We're also on a constant move from democracy, or what we thought was democracy. I think it's always been pretty much an illusion and a con. But they're taking away even the illusion of democracy, and we're moving into an unelected bureaucracy. We see that with the EU, with the UN. And the WideShut webcast and Resistance Radio are not here to feed you bullshit about these issues. We're not reading government statements. We're not pretending like our leaders have any credibility anymore, because they don't. And we're not owned by any corporation like the mainstream media, who refuse to show any kind of critical thinking. They talk about an Iranian nuclear threat as if it exists. We point out that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, does not have the capability to develop a nuclear weapon, has never expressed interest in developing a nuclear weapon, has never even invaded another country, and quite frankly is the victim of a propaganda campaign of the West and Israel, because they're imperialist scumbags. We don't dance around the issues. If you like facts without the government or corporate spin, then this show is for you. If you want to talk about Obama being the Antichrist, or that everybody involved in the Occupy movement and every famous person is a paid actor, or if you want to talk about Nibiru, that Nibiru is coming, but you can't see it in telescopes, folks, because, it's the other side of the moon. Or if you want to talk about HARP being responsible for everything, including your granny's arthritis. Or if you want to come at me with 9/11, the planes were holograms. You're just not looking closely enough. Then the show probably isn't for you. There are real conspiracies, and I think some people are almost hindering our ability to expose them because it all gets caught up in the conspiranoia, and everyone gets lumped into the crazy pot. Now, I do sometimes get flack for supposedly focusing on the negative, but primarily this is a news show, and unfortunately the news is negative. And I think it's important that we do focus on the news and the system and the intricacies of what's going on. You're never going to be able to bring me an argument that says, you know, you shouldn't analyse the system. You shouldn't analyse everything that's going on. It's important. It's important for history. It's important for your own peace of mind. You know, we need to understand the system we're up against. We need to have the facts so we can help wake other people up who are still buying into the mainstream spin. If you feel there's too much negativity, then that's something you're going to have to address in your own life. You know, I can't be your change. You have to be your own change you want to see in the world. I'm just doing a news show. If you think you're aware enough of the system, like many of us are, then you need to go away and do whatever you need to do, whether that's stocking up on food, protecting your wealth in silver or gold. If you want to go all out and stop paying tax, stop using oil, start to grow your own food, all these things, they're things that you've got to do. I can't make you do them. But if you want to keep up with what's happening in the news, then for an hour or maybe an hour and a half now each week, then you can tune in here at the WideShut Webcast on Resistance Radio. And of course, I'm not claiming that I've got the ultimate truth. Obviously, research what I say, follow the links, make up your own mind, check what I'm saying. But yeah, long story short, hello to any of the new listeners out there, and hello again to the choir who I've just bored. But before we actually do get into the news, I also want to talk about an experience I had the other day. I think I will go the full hour and a half tonight. So there is some time to veer off into Ponderland. Tell me to shut up in the chat though if I am boring you. But I just want to talk about a little experience I had the other day that reminded me what we perceive, our thoughts, our emotions, are not always under our own control. We're creatures of stimuli. We react to our environment, what's around us. You know, you shine a light into somebody's eye, they're going to, you know, jump back and go, "Oh, my eye, there's light in my eye." That, you know, that's a physical example. But we also have a similar psychological response to things. Somebody smiles at you, your instant reaction is to smile back at them. You know, you might be watching television and it might be the most annoying program you've ever watched, but if some person's smiling, you'll find yourself smiling. That's because we're creatures of stimuli. We react to the environment. Now, unfortunately, because our society is so full of control freaks and people who want to manipulate others for their own gain, that response mechanism is constantly being hijacked. And I'll explain what I mean. I was in a car the other day driving past a billboard. You know, one of those big ugly adverts that they put on the side of the road to piss everybody off. And I was basically daydreaming, just sort of slumped against the window. And I saw this billboard and it had this little kid playing in the sand. You know, this happy little blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid playing in the sand. And I immediately went back to when I was a little kid at the seaside with the family, you know, playing in the sand. Before we had to worry about what's happening in the world, when everything was just fun. And I quickly snapped out of that daydream and began to actually read the billboard. And you know what it was for? Life insurance. And the gist of it was, you know, if you don't get life insurance, you could die. And this little kid that's all happy in the sand, he won't have a daddy. And the family won't have any money. So you must get our life insurance. And I just thought, what a weird world we live in. We've reached this bizarre point in evolution where we erect these giant paper pictures of kids playing in sand so we can emotionally guilt trip somebody into paying somebody else these strange electronic digits that we call money now, so that that person can be rich and be a successful businessman and buy things that they don't need. What a strange world. You know, if you believe in the Big Bang or whatever, we came from one little spark, the universe expanded, life began, we evolved from chimps or whatever, and now we make these giant billboards to guilt trip people into paying electronic digits to other people. What the fuck have we done wrong? And it's not even that I'm angry, you know. It's just bizarre. I don't even think the people that do these sorts of things really are aware of what they're doing. It's just a self-perpetuating system. That's what they do. It's tolerated. They're born into a world where there are billboards and marketers and life insurance and things. That's just the reality that's been given to people. But I don't understand it. I can't get my head around it. Maybe I'm weird. I don't know. And, you know, the tagline to my website is, "Your eyes are open, but you do not see." And it's a little bit dodgy. I might change it in the end. I might even change the name of the show and stuff. But people really don't see. They don't see. They don't see the level of manipulation around them. Most people don't even consider that they have a subconscious mind. They've got no concept of that. You know, someone will come to you and say, "Oh, I had a really weird dream last night. Made no sense at all. Got no idea what it meant." Well, it makes perfect sense if you actually spend the time analysing your dreams. I actually keep a dream diary because it's a great way of exploring what's actually in your subconscious. It can help you solve problems. You know, things you're not always aware of, things you're suppressing. It all comes out in your dreams, in your subconscious. And I won't go too deeply into that today. But just think about it. When your subconscious is being bombarded with all this advertising and bullshit, it's got to have an effect. Carl Jung explored how information that you take in subconsciously can actually create conscious thoughts and actions. You find yourself doing things or thinking things and you think it was came out of nowhere, but it's actually because of subconscious information that you've taken in. You know, when you sit there and go, "Oh, I really fancy a Pepsi right now," that might not actually be your thought. That might have been put in there by something else. So, I guess the lesson, folks, is if you're driving past billboards, give them a little read and don't let your mind wander, because, I don't know, you might find yourself buying life insurance or something. In fact, if you're driving past a billboard, try and keep your eyes on the road. I don't want anyone to crash. But we're going to go to a quick break, and I'll be back shortly.
By the way, if anyone here is in advertising or marketing, kill yourself. Thank you. Thanks. Just a little thought. I'm just trying to plant seeds. Maybe one day they'll take root. I don't know. You try. You do what you can. Kill yourselves. Seriously, though, if you are, do. No, really. There's no rationalization for what you do, and you are Satan's little helpers, okay? Kill yourself. Seriously. You're the ruiner of all things good. Seriously. No, this is not a joke. He's going to be a joke coming. There's no fucking joke coming. You are Satan's spawn, filling the world with bile and garbage. You are fucked, and you are fucking us. Kill yourself. It's the only way to save your fucking soul. Kill yourself. Plant seeds. I know all the marketing people are going, he's doing a joke. There's no joke here whatsoever. Suck a tailpipe, fucking hang yourself, borrow a gun from a yank friend. I don't care how you do it. Rid the world of your evil fucking machinations. Whatever, you know what I mean. I know what all the marketing people are thinking right now, too. Oh, you know what Bill's doing? He's going for that anti-marketing dollar. That's a good market. He's very smart. Oh, man, I am not doing that. You fucking evil scumbags. Oh, you know what Bill's doing now? He's going for the righteous indignation dollar. That's a big dollar. A lot of people are feeling that indignation. We've done research. Huge market. He's doing a good thing. God damn it, I'm not doing that, you scumbags. Quit putting a goddamn dollar sign on every fucking thing on this planet. Ooh, the anger dollar. Huge. Huge in times of recession. Giant market. Bill's very bright to do that. God, I'm just caught in a fucking web. Ooh, the trapped dollar. Big dollar. Huge dollar. Good market. Look at our research. We see that many people feel trapped. If we play to them and separate them into the trapped dollar, how do you live like that? I bet you sleep like fucking babies at night, don't you? What'd you do tonight, honey? Oh, we made arsenic childhood food now. Good night. Yeah, we just said, is your baby really too loud? Yeah, the mums will love it, yeah. Sleep like fucking children, don't you? This is your world, isn't it?
Okay, welcome back to the WideShut Webcast with me, Keelan Balderson. The great Bill Hicks there. I thought that clip kind of fitted in with what I was talking about the big billboards and everything. And what he was saying about arsenic in baby food, I mean, it's not too far off. There are some baby foods that contain aspartame. And that does, in fact, if you take enough of it, ruin your brain. So, there you go. Getting into the news. Protest forces Tesco store to close. Police were called yesterday to a demonstration in a central London Tesco store. Around a dozen protesters sat down or stood by the tills at the Tesco Express branch on Westminster Bridge Road opposite the Houses of Parliament. The Right to Work campaigners, who forced the shop to close to customers, were demonstrating over a job advert which looked for permanent workers in exchange for expenses and job seekers' allowance. Tesco has amended the misunderstood advert and says it was down to a mistake. But the row has rumbled on. As many police officers as protesters were sent to break up the small demonstration. The campaigners chanted, "Tesco bosses, hear us say, we won't work if you won't pay." They also held signs based on the supermarket giant's advertising catchphrase which read, "Tesco, exploitation, every little helps." Twitter and Facebook users had highlighted the advert for a night shift worker at a store in West Suffolk on the Job Seekers Plus website. It was offered under the government's sector-based work academy scheme, which is linked to payment of benefits. But Tesco said the impression that it was seeking to replace full-time workers was mistaken. Tesco has explained that the advert was a mistake caused by an IT error by Jobcentre Plus, which is now being rectified. Notice how it spun away from the root issue. The coalition government is allowing supermarkets like Tesco to utilise slave labour. That's the issue. Not that Tesco advertised the position incorrectly. The fact that it's being done at all is the problem. What's happening is under this back to work scheme, where they're trying to get the work shy back into the jobs, because they're all lazy. You know, we've not got a recession, they're just lazy. We've got record employment right now, or unemployment, sorry, because the bankers destroyed the economy. The job market was destroyed by the bankers. Yet they go on about benefit cheats and work shy. No, it's because we're in a recession, for God's sake. They just want to make everyone think it's about laziness, get everyone bickering at each other. I've even seen it on my Facebook, people putting, posts, oh, these people on benefits, one woman got £50 billion on benefits, says the Daily Mail, yeah, whatever. But what's happening under this scheme is, unemployed people on job seekers allowance, which as I said earlier is £64.30 a week. The average wage is like £400. You can't live on 64 quid a week, folks. But the government is forcing people to work for up to 6 months in these retail jobs to keep that benefit, when those employers could just employ the people to a real job with a real wage. It's disgusting. It's slave labour. And the unions have only just taken notice. And I know in certain situations work experience is a good thing. It does help people back into work. But the system's being abused. We've got record unemployment. Do you think everybody who hasn't got a job because they're idiots or because they don't want to work? No, they haven't got a job because there aren't the jobs. So if there are jobs, give them the jobs. Don't give them 6 months of unpaid work and then say, sorry, you can't have the job. And notice how they talk about this error on the Jobcentre IT system. It's not an error. They're fudging the statistics. They're making it look like there are jobs, so the government can say, hey look, there's all these jobs, what are you all moaning about? And then some people are being conned into working these jobs, then realising they're not actually jobs. And it's all just to cut government spending. That's the crux of everything the coalition government are doing. It's just to cut public spending so the bankers can have a little bit more of their interest paid back on the national debt. Everything. And this is how deep the fudging of those statistics go. Jobcentre Plus caught listing non-jobs, slave labour positions and government schemes as employment vacancies. The latest figures also showed that there are more jobs in the economy. So the government has come out and said there's more jobs, but it's because of these fudge statistics. With 476,000 vacancies available at any one time, this is a rise of 11,000 on the 3 months to October 2011. So how much of these 476,000 vacancies are real? And this is data that somebody's taken from the Jobcentre Plus system. 16% of the jobs were for slave labour positions or prison leaver programs. 3% of job listings were for government programs about getting back into work, rather than actual jobs. 8% of listings were duplicates. So they let companies come on and put a job, and then they've duplicated it so many times under different headlines or whatever. You know, that's how crap the system is. 6% were work from home sales pitches. You know, those scams you get, oh, you can work from home if you deliver all these leaflets for 3p. And it basically works out something like 33% of job listings are not actually jobs. But it's alright because the government have spent 33 billion on a new high-speed train between London and Birmingham, which reduces the journey by 24 minutes. Yay! Everyone can be train drivers. The economy's saved. We're building a train. Oh dear. But anyway, moving on to our next headline. Phone and email records to be stored in new spy plan. This is from The Telegraph, but Mr. Britt also did a good article on it on resistradio.com, giving it a little more of a critical analysis. You know, because the mainstream media, it's all fair and good presenting facts and sort of pretending to be unbiased. But the trouble is, when you have an out-of-control government proposing systems that would fit in 1984, I think it's time they had a little bit of critical thinking, instead of just saying, oh, the government has decided to put every communication everybody has in a database because of terrorism. End of the article. How about you use your noggin and actually look into what's happening? Details of every phone call and text message, email traffic and websites visited online are to be stored in a series of vast databases under new government anti-terror plans. That's not a joke. This is science fiction come to life. It's really happening. They want to have every text message, every phone call, all email traffic, every website everyone's visited, you know, all the different contacts you've had with people in vast databases. Landline and mobile phone companies and broadband providers will be ordered to store the data for a year and make it available to the security services under the new scheme. The databases would not record the contents of calls, text or emails, but the numbers, email addresses and who they are sent and received by. For the first time, the security services will have widespread access to information about who has been communicating with each other on social networking sites such as Facebook. Direct messages between subscribers to websites such as Twitter would also be stored, as well as communications between players in online video games. So basically, they want to know everybody you're associating with. Since when has it been the government's business to know who you talk to, or who you email, or who you tweet to? Who I talk to is my business. Nobody else's business. My business. I mean, do we get to look at David Cameron's contact list? I mean, I'd love to check it out, to see who he's selling us out to next. And do you really trust these people with the data? This will be ripe for hacking. Every hacker, every malicious threat, every foreign government is going to want access to this, says Privacy International. How many headlines have we seen over the years about the government losing data, losing disks? Oh, they left it on a train. Oh, they left it in a taxi. These people are morons. Do you really trust them with these vast databases? They're probably too idiotic to even do anything with them. But they'll probably lose them. And I was doing a bit of research, and I recalled something Mr. Cameron said before he was elected. This was one of his pledges to be elected. Cameron, I'll roll back Labour's Big Brother state. David Cameron will launch a radical programme to slash bureaucracy, reform public services and roll back the surveillance state within weeks of the general election if he wins power on Thursday. Shh, what's that noise? Oh yeah, it's politicians lying again. Does anybody still believe these people? It was the big Tory thing. We'll roll back Labour's Big Brother state, and then we'll put our own even worse Big Brother state in a few months later. And at least if you're going to use terrorism as a pretext to take away people's liberty, at least make it make sense. So they want to store every record of who's contacting who to help fight terrorism. Well, if they suspect somebody is a terrorist, they can do that anyway. It's called surveillance. What this really is about is making you the terrorist. Guilty until proven innocent. And you've also got to ask, what terrorism? What terrorism is it protecting us from? When was the last time there was a terrorist attack? They seem to be doing a good job as it is, if you ask me. How do they justify this? What's the reasoning? Has there been more terrorism? No explanation. They just decide today we're going to do this for terrorism. I mean, you get hit by cars more often than people die in terrorist attacks. Why don't they ban cars or something? It doesn't make any sense. And if you watch my film 7/7, What Did They Know? It's quite clear the only time there was a proper terror attack, it had their sticky hands all over it. Oh, whoops, we cropped this image really badly. We made it black and white and photocopied it like 15,000 times so you can't even see the features on the terrorist's face. And they wonder why their informant couldn't identify the person. What was that about? But if we got nothing to hide, what you worried about? I'm worried about authoritarianism. I'm worried about a country run by criminals that murder people at the drop of the hat, that think nothing of forcing people into slave labour, for example, who will happily drop bombs on innocent people and pretend it's to protect innocent people. And let's not forget, they've already implied that Occupy protesters are terrorists. They've already had documents come out calling anarchists terrorists. So when they say it's going to be used for terrorism, who exactly are they even talking about? It's probably so they can monitor which activists are talking to which activist, when there's going to be a protest and all that kind of thing. You know, during the riots they were talking about shutting down BlackBerry Messenger and closing down social networking sites and all this kind of thing. Even if that's not the intention, it lays the groundwork for that to happen. You give them an inch, they take a mile. I mean, do you trust these people? I don't. And I find it quite ironic, because again in my film 7/7 What Did They Know, I also cover how William Hague is planning to make the intelligence services even more secret. He wants a system where any evidence gathered by MI5 or MI6 can only be heard in secret courts. So all the information we got about the security services surveilling the alleged bombers before the 7/7 attacks, all that kind of stuff that implicated them, we may never know that if it happens again, because it will be conducted in secret courts. None of it will come out. So as we have to give up more of our privacy, they get to hide even further behind the system. As they get more ability to carry out their actions in secret, working with Al-Qaeda, directing the rebels in Syria, now legally murdering people. I forgot this headline. How secret renditions shed light on MI6's license to kill and torture. Little known clause lets Secretary of State authorise UK spies to commit crimes abroad. Just Google that headline. I forgot to put the link. How secret renditions shed light on MI6's license to kill and torture. As they get more control, as they get more out of control, and are now allowed to hide everything and get away with murder, we have to give them everything. We're sliding into a very, very scary state of affairs. Now, they're not shipping us off to the camps, but as a society, as a humanity, we're supposed to improve. We're supposed to get better. We're supposed to get more free. We're not supposed to go backwards. I mean, did we defeat the Nazis just so we could become the Nazis? It doesn't make any sense. And actually, quite like the Nazis, who wanted to take their empire global, Hitler actually wrote a book that's roughly translated, the title is roughly translated to the New World Order. Like Hitler, now the Western leaders also want a global empire. Takes us to our next headline. Clinton attends unofficial G20 meeting to discuss global governance, which is really a fluffy newspeak term, which means global control. If our governments at the moment are becoming less and less democratic, if our governments are becoming more authoritarian, launching these spy databases, and they're talking about global governance, what do you think that means? Do you really want to see this system globally? Do you think if they get a complete global system that it's going to be world peace all of a sudden? That we're going to have freedom all of a sudden? That none of our liberties are going to be infringed on anymore? No, it's just going to be global tyranny. And I believe this meeting is actually still taking place, or may have just finished sometime today. But this is what I wrote on Saturday. Tomorrow through Monday, Hillary Clinton and foreign ministers representing the G20 countries will be having an unofficial meeting in Los Cabos, Mexico, to discuss some of the major roadblocks preventing the effective implementation of global governance and some of the pretexts used to promote it. Mexico hosts the full G20 event in June. According to the Business Standard, topics of discussion will include transnational crime, green growth, climate change and food security. The event is being organised by Patricia Espinozo Cantileno, the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Mexico. Using the contrived economic collapse as an example, she claims there is a global governance gap, one that the G20 is called upon to bridge. Having the foreign ministers of some of the most active countries in international affairs discussing openly and freely ways to improve global governance should be a welcome step forward. At what point democracy and sovereignty comes into play is not clear. It certainly won't happen with unelected High Representative for EU Foreign Affairs Catherine Ashton on the attendee list. And this is the thing with all these meetings, all these globalist meetings. A lot of these people think they're doing the right thing. They see themselves as some kind of loving superclass that needs to help all the peasants out. Well, it's elitism. It's the elite. But they feel it's their duty to save the world. What gives them the right to think that, to do that? I don't remember voting for any of these people. I don't know who this lady is. Why do they get to decide on all these things? The ultimate goal of the forthcoming ministerial meeting at Los Cabos is to seek new actions that can help us fulfill more effectively our global responsibilities for the benefit of each of our societies and of the world community as a whole. How about stop meddling in everybody's business then? How about you just go away? You're not helping us, you're making it worse. Imperialism destroyed Africa. Corporations then went in and continued the imperialism, stole all their resources, and then you get these globalist meetings where they talk about how we'll have to govern the whole world to make it right. No, you need to get the hell out of Africa. Oh, the EU is collapsing. We need more stringent EU laws. No, you need to end the EU. The bankers crashed the economy. Instead of arresting the bankers that caused this mess, instead of actually reforming the banking system, let's have a global currency and we'll rob everybody globally. The centralization of power is what's destroying the world, and their solution is always more control and more centralization of power. And a lot of these people are just deluded. They think they're doing the right thing. Oh yes, let's help the African savages and give them aid and let's help them to go green because they don't know how to do it. How about you give them their sovereignty back? We've got a real problem when farmers have to farm food in the third world to export it, and then they're only paid pennies so that they can't even afford their own food. You know, we've got a real problem when these poorer countries are trying to industrialise and catch up with the West, and when they start to build hospitals and get things going, we run in there and say, oh, but we've got to save the environment, so you can't build this hospital, and if you do, you're going to have to put a solar panel on the roof that can only power the hospital for like 2 hours a day. But it's alright because they're saving the planet. But even then, it's all a conspiracy theory. There's no meetings, there's no G20, there's no Bilderberg. What are you talking about? You're mentally ill. Or as Aranovich says, it's just a supper club. Do you know what I want to ask? Why are all these people eating supper so often? Is that all they do? Do they just eat supper? They should all be fat. The amount of meetings these people have, the amount of supper clubs they go to. Who are these weirdos eating supper all the time? What's wrong with lunch? What's wrong with dinner? Can't they have dinner clubs? Why is it always supper clubs? Oh, it's so ridiculous. I'm not sure if we're going to get time to go into the Mark Duggan stuff. But basically, there's been a pre-inquest hearing, and the person representing the family is actually quite a high-profile person. He spoke out against the evidence for Lockerbie, which we know is a fraud. He represented Mohammed Al-Fayed in the Princess Diana inquest. There's a few other people. I think he represented some of the innocent people sent down for the IRA stuff as well. But basically, Mark Duggan didn't fire a weapon. And the weapon they claim that was his, they've not found any of his DNA or fingerprints on the weapon. And officers who originally lied and said that he'd shot at them have now actually admitted that they threw this weapon over a fence. But it's not even clear, from this kind of pre-inquest hearing what the evidence was that it was his in the first place. And then we have the car taken away, this taxi that he was in that they pulled him from, and as one witness says, executed him on the floor. But we'll just brush that witness aside. He must have not existed. But they took the car away for a few hours and brought it back again. All sorts of shenanigans. So we'll have to wait and see what happens when the inquest actually goes ahead. As I said in my Riots film, Perfect Storm, it basically seems like they executed the guy and then tried to cover it up. It might have been a mistake. We can't tell, but why are they shooting to kill people in the first place? I've never been able to get my head around that. They now have things called tasers. So in these situations, obviously if it's a long distance shootout in some kind of tower block, then perhaps guns are the only way of solving the situation. But if you're right next to the person, why do you have to shoot them? Taser them. That's what tasers are for. It's supposed to replace lethal force. But we still have these gun squads running around. Doesn't make sense. Nothing makes sense. But the final story we're going to get to before we wrap things up tonight, of course, we've got Blue Bus at 9:30. He'll be on the old system still on Blog Talk Radio, so I'll be sure to paste a link in at the end of the show so you don't get lost in the shuffle, any guests that aren't quite aware of what's going on. But the final story tonight before we wrap things up, think tanks aim to change public behaviour about climate change. Chatham House, a globalist think tank and sister organisation to America's Council on Foreign Relations, is currently running a programme with the aim of changing public opinion and behaviour about climate change. The group is conducting studies on how the public's behaviour and beliefs are formed in relation to the climate change debate, including where they gather their news, what sources they consider trustworthy, and how their behaviour and beliefs change over time in relation to any new information that they receive. They want to determine where public trust lies and whose message is having the most impact. Ultimately, the goal is to aid government policymakers and the mainstream media in developing strategies for changing behaviour in order to address climate change and energy security. Worryingly, there is no indication that they acknowledge any kind of sceptical view on the matter, so it appears that they literally want to reshape the minds of the masses to accept the global government agenda to save the planet, or more aptly, to centrally control it. The interim findings of the Belief, Attitude and Behaviour on Climate Change and Energy Security study will be discussed at a Chatham House invitation-only workshop on March 28th. That's democracy for you, invitation only. And of course, that's where Chatham House rules come from. All these think tanks and groups use something called Chatham House rules, which means they don't reveal anything they've discussed in the meeting with anyone outside of the people that were in the meeting. But personally, I think if somebody is trying to change our behaviour and opinions, we should probably know what they're doing. But that's just my opinion. Maybe it needs to be changed, I don't know. I'm not the one tasked to save the world. What do I know? I wasn't born into a uber-rich family with ties back to Babylon, am I? Sorry. Although no data has been released, and probably never will be, the think tanks claim after several focus groups that took place across the country, patterns of beliefs and behaviours can already be analysed, meaning it's only a matter of time before they put their strategies of brainwashing into action. One has to ask, if the climate change debate is so settled and the evidence is so clear, why do they have to resort to subversive tactics in order to sway public opinion? The truth is, the debate is far from over, and when cutting through the alarmist computer model generated rhetoric, the Earth hasn't actually warmed in 10 years. Most of the UN crowd's claims and predictions have not come true, and they're embroiled in scandal after scandal that shows them to be misleading the public. Chairing the project is a lady by the name of Estelle Rouhard, who heads up one of the many pro-man-made global warming NGOs, Action for a Global Climate Community. The name is almost self-explanatory, but to spell it out, she advocates uniting government officials, climate specialists, and civil society groups over the world toward creating a global climate community. Quite where national sovereignty and democracy fall into that goal is not clear. Her group is in turn sponsored by the One World Trust, who according to their website, founded as one of their first of its kind, the All-Parliamentary Group for World Government. If there was any doubt of Rouhard's agenda, she also vice-chairs Euromove, Britain's pro-European campaigning organisation. Although the latest rounds of climate talks failed to produce anything significant, the vast industry of biased scientists, NGOs, think tanks, activists and globalists are far from giving up the battle. I mean, how many one world, global government, global community phrases do they have to say before it becomes obvious? It's right there. They admit what they want to do. And they have to deceptively get us there. You know, we can't have the people decide whether they want world government. We can't have a vote. The people don't know what they're talking about. We're the elite. We'll decide for them. We're saving the planet. How about you save the planet from yourselves? Anyway, I think we're going to wrap that up now. Other things to keep an eye on this week, to look further into if you've not seen the headlines. We've had Cameron and Sarkozy announce a joint military command centre following the success of the peace bomb operation in Libya. They were so impressed by what they accomplished, they want to have a joint military command centre. Lovely. Also, as Brit covered on Friday, the underwear bomber has got multiple life sentences for the Christmas Day false flag from a couple of years ago. You know, despite the government getting him on the plane and escorting him past security, he goes to jail, the government gets off scot-free. And Michael Chertoff gets a nice paycheck for his body scanners that can't even detect liquids anyway. We've also had the United Nations pass a resolution on Syria. It's not legally binding, so they don't actually have the right to invade as of yet, but it does kind of set that stage. It's now official that all these countries agree that Assad must step down. And the Arab League, of course, want a UN intervention. And it's funny, because they call the UN interventions, they call them peacekeeping missions. I don't remember anything peaceful about tanks. And the psychological kind of, what do you want to call it, psychological warfare. They have these tanks, but they paint them white So apparently that makes it all okay. White tanks instead of green tanks. Moving on, there's also doctors want to remotely deliver drugs through wireless chip. Ignoring the mounting evidence, of course, that chips and Wi-Fi actually cause cancer, you have all these cases of animals that have been implanted with identity chips and they get massive cancerous tumours around those chips. So we're going to give you drugs wirelessly to help you get better, apparently, but you could get cancer. I don't know, but that pretty much wraps it up this week, folks. I'm losing my voice here, so I won't ramble on. Be sure to tune in to the Reality Check show with Blue Bus, which will begin in 20 minutes at 9:30. That'll be at the old station link. Brits put a link in to the chat room there. blogtalkradio.com/resistance radio. Thank you for joining me today. Be sure to keep it locked on wideshut.co.uk throughout the week if you want to keep up with all the news without any spin from the government or the corporations. And remember, the worse it gets, the more people wake up. It's simply an evolutionary process. There will be a tipping point. Humanity will learn from this experience. Just like the toddler learns not to put his hand on the cooker after he's burnt his hand. One day, humanity will grow up. There's no progress without struggle. And we'll go to that song by Vinnie Paz.
If you found the preceding information valuable, please consider buying a DVD or making a small donation of your choosing. Go to wideshut.co.uk/donate. That's wideshut.co.uk/donate. You are the resistance.
Lost my job at the factory and that's disastrous. They said it's due to regulations and higher taxes. They ain't give me no notice, they knocked me off my axis. I can't pay the electric bill, it's total blackness. I suggested some incentives for innovation, but that was met with resistance like it's a sin of Satan. I'm losing my patience over here, I'm sick of waiting. And I ain't never expect to be in this situation. And the manufacturing jobs are fading fast. Can't do nothing else, I should've stayed in class. I have to wait till summertime to cut the blades of grass. I had this little bit of money, have to make it last. I have children to feed, I have a loving wife. I had a hard time coming up, was nothing nice. I keep asking myself, what am I doing wrong? And they just look at me and tell me keep it moving on. It was like 91, 92. I remember people telling us that ain't nobody signing yo. It's no Italians or Puerto Ricans that shining through. Y'all should go back and just do what y'all was designed to do. We ain't listen to none of that, we hard-headed. We took it back to the lab and then the guard said it. We smoked L's, drank liquor and we got wetted. And everything we did back then was barbaric. Around 94, had some labels take notice. They said it still was the illest, but that I ain't focused. The label execs needed to be explained dopeness. And as around the time I thought that it became hopeless, we was still in the street, D was moving strong. I was failing out of school, it wasn't cool with moms. I was asking myself, what was we doing wrong? And why the industry saying to keep it moving on?
Sometimes
moved up cause they promised me some college money. I ain't the smartest motherfucker, but I'm not a dummy. They told me I would be stationed in places hot and sunny. I had a lot of pride, motherfuckers got it from me. These people over here innocent, they never harm me. My sergeant tried to convince me that they would try to bomb me. I feel like an outsider stuck inside his army. Everybody brainwashed, American zombies. I ain't realized how much it sent me back until I lost my leg and then they sent me back. I don't have anything, now I'm left with scraps from a government who created AIDS, invented crack. People told me not to join, I tried to prove them wrong. Now I'm homeless and I'm cold without no food is warm. I keep asking myself, what did I do this wrong? And the government telling me keep it moving on. Yeah, a wise man once said, there is no progress without struggle. I'm a believer in that shit. I struggled my whole life. Feel me on this here.